John Wood, founder of Room to Read. You've been talking to banks and Microsoft here in Singapore. How willing are people to give to Room to Read right now?
More willing than people believe right now. There's a lot of doom and gloom headlines in the media for good reasons. Conditions are tough economically, but I find there's a flight to quality with charity. This morning I met with Credit Suisse, with Deutsche Bank, with Microsoft, and thankfully they're all in. They're all supporting Room to Read this year as they have in previous years. So overall, I think that a good thing for Room to Read is that we've performed at a more high level than we actually predicted. So 765 schools, 7,000 libraries, 3 million children served in less than 10 years. So as a result of that, thankfully, our donations are continuing. We're growing through this recession.
You were looking to open some 30 libraries a week. Are you still on course for that?
Right now, we're opening, on average, 5 libraries a day. So that'll be 35 libraries a week? Yep. And probably at least, I would say 2,200 libraries this year would be our prediction. So it's like a Starbucks type rate of growth. Every library serves about 400 students, so we should reach an incremental million students this year alone with their first library. Every library is multilingual or bilingual. Every library has a trained librarian, and every library has monitoring and evaluation to make sure that the quality is there in the library is sustainable and successful over time.
You mentioned Starbucks, but Starbucks is starting to scale back though.
Well, I think what we want to do is we don't want to scale back at Room to Read. There's a lot of need out there. There's 300 million students, potential students, I should say, 300 million kids who woke up this morning and didn't have a school to go to. There's 800 million people in the world who are illiterate, and 2/3 of those groups are girls and women, which is the problem that pays itself forward in perpetuity, because if you don't educate the women, you don't educate the next generation. So Room to Read really has growth built into our DNA, because every day you lose with a kid is a day you don't get back. And how do you tell a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, hang on, we'll get to you in 5 years? They're so capable of having their brains develop at a young age. We just have to think big about how we can reach more kids.
You've concentrated on Asia and Africa up to now, but are you looking to expand to South America sometime in the future?
At some point, Room to Read wants to go into Latin America. Right now, we've got a pretty full plate. We're only 9 years old, and we're already in 9 countries. Last year, we launched Zambia. This year, we're launching Bangladesh. In the future, though, we hope to go to additional places. We're needed all over the world. I have dozens of countries that are asking, when can Room to Read come to Guatemala, to El Salvador, to Mozambique, to Kenya, to Rwanda, to Tanzania, to Burundi, to Indonesia? The need out there is incredible. And what I find the most challenging thing to do is to say, how do we continue to grow the number of countries we serve? Because as I said, if you don't reach these kids today, something else is going to reach them. And it may not necessarily be a positive thing like education.
And you're doing this mainly with volunteers.
Yeah, the secret sauce of Room to Read, one of the secret sauces, we've got a few, including our local language publishing program. But one of the big things that we've done is actually incubated 41 fundraising chapters around the world, including here in Singapore. They're volunteer-driven, they're self-motivated, they're self-directed, and they collectively raise about $6 to $7 million US a year, which is a lot of money in a developed economy like the US or Singapore, but it's a heck of a lot of money when you take that into the developing world where a dollar goes 100 times as far. So those 41 chapters, and there's a map on our website at roomtoread.org, are looking for people to get involved. And in cities where we don't have a chapter, we're looking for entrepreneurial, very driven people to get involved. Maybe it's a retiree or a semi-retiree. Maybe it's just a busy person who knows how to get things done. But we're looking to have more chapters in more cities around the world.
You were a senior executive at Microsoft. Do you have any regrets about leaving? You stepped down about 10 years ago.
My only regret about leaving Microsoft happens once a month when I open my bank statement. And then I kind of realize what I gave up. But no, seriously, I have no regrets. For me, charity is not a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. To me, doing what I do is 7/24, 365. And that's not a cliche. That's something that I live every day. We look at how many kids can we reach, how many kids have we not reached. And so for me now today, I work longer than I ever worked at Microsoft. I travel more than I ever traveled. I have more people reporting to me than ever had reporting to me, but I'm happier. I may make a lot less money, but I'm happier. I wake up every day and I cannot wait to get started. I want to just hit the ground running. And today is an example of this, of just going out and being all over Singapore as quickly as possible in as many places as possible to tell this tremendous story that is Room to Read. It's an honor to live this life. It has its unique challenges, but I'm really lucky that I found this role for myself.
What are the business principles that you brought with you from Microsoft to Room to Read?
Well, the first principle of Room to Read is basically borrowed from Steve Ballmer. I can remember Steve saying, go big or go home. If you're going to do something, do it in a really, really big way. When I started Room to Read, I said that I had a big goal. I wanted to reach 10 million kids with a lifelong gift of education by the year 2020. I was told that was crazy, hubristic, etc. We're actually on track to not only meet that goal, we're on track to exceed that goal. So number one, the big, bold goals attract bold people. I think the second part of the business mentality is giving people a transparency to know where their money goes. Today I was with a guy from Microsoft. He said, "What do you need from me?" I said, "Can you pay for a school to be built in Sri Lanka? How much does it cost?" $28,000. He said, "Great, sold. I'll write you the check in September when my bonus comes in." So there's a transparency element to what Room to Read does, and there's a direct causal link between what they donate and what we do. And then third business principle is keeping your costs structure low. If a business is inefficient, it's eventually undercut by its competitors and it's run out of business. Charity, they kind of get to survive with 40% overhead. People still give them money. I don't believe in that. We do everything in our power to keep our overhead expenses low. I'll give you a couple of just quick examples. Credit Suisse gives us free office space in London and Hong Kong. Cathay Pacific gives us free airline seats. We have a donor from Goldman Sachs who gave me 3 million of his frequent flyer miles, and I've used every one of them to fly around the world. Here in Singapore, the Four Seasons Hotel has given us free rooms. When I'm here, when I'm in Tokyo, hotels give us free rooms. Everything we can do to keep our overhead structure low, we do. Our overhead life to date is 15% of total donations. So it means we can deploy 85 cents in the dollar directly to programs. It means we can actually get every year the Charity Navigator 4-star rating, their highest rating.
What was your motivation for starting Room to Read?
My motivation is that education is a hand up, not a handout. It's not something you do to somebody, it's something you do for them. You give them an opportunity. I don't believe in the model of just dropping off a bunch of stuff and giving it as a free gift to local people, because if you do that, they don't have skin in the game. They don't feel ownership, and the project is not sustainable. At Room to Read, we have what we call the challenge grant model. The challenge grant model basically works with the villages to say, if you want the school or the library, work with us. Parents dig the foundation, mothers carry bags of cement up the mountainside. If you're building a library, the parents will come in and build the shelves and paint the wall. What we do then is we pair them with a Western investor. It might be Goldman Sachs or Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank or JP Morgan Chase or Qualcomm. The list goes on and on of our corporate sponsors. But we basically ask companies everywhere to do something, because the world is rapidly globalizing in terms of where money is made, and businesses are going all over the world. CSR needs to go all over the world too. CSR should not be sitting at the head office in Purchase, New York or in Los Angeles. CSR money should be deployed out to the markets of the future, in my opinion.
Do you consider yourself to be a social entrepreneur?
I do. I mean, social entrepreneur is a difficult term. People hear it and it's kind of a little bit of a Rorschach blot. What does it mean? To me, what it means, entrepreneurs, classic for-profit entrepreneurs, Richard Branson, Michael Dell, Howard Schultz, they see a market gap or a vacuum and they fill it, but they fill it with a profit motive in mind. Social entrepreneurs, be they Wendy Kopp at Teach for America or Paul Farmer at Partners in Health, myself, Kiva, groups like this, we see a market gap and we solve that problem. But we don't do it for profit motives. We do it because there's something inside of us that believes that there's just this inherent need to think bigger than our parents or our grandparents have thought about these problems. In the old days, it was make money, retire, be satisfied. I tell anybody I know who's made it in life, who's rich, their job's not done yet. I think the example of Bill and Melinda Gates, the example of Warren Buffett proves that. It's not enough anymore to make it. You have to then deploy it. Making it is half the game, deploying it is the second half, and to quote Andrew Carnegie, the man who dies rich dies disgraced. I honestly believe that.
Does it help that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett are now getting involved in philanthropy?
Well, I hope what people take out of that is a less cynical interpretation, which is the Gateses are doing it, Buffett's doing it, every other billionaire should do something big. Every billionaire in the world, and I challenged in a Business Week editorial, every billionaire in the world to say, pick one issue and move a bunch of your chips onto the table. And that issue could be education in the developing world, it could be clean water, it could be microfinance. But there are, to make the Forbes 400 list, $1 billion of US is no longer enough. You have to have like 1.2 billion. So there's a lot of capital out there. And I hope that the number 3 billionaire and the number 20 billionaire and the number 200 billionaire decide to follow Bill and Melinda's example and do something significant. And they'll get a lot out of it too. That's the thing. I mean, you can't spend $1 billion in your lifetime. You can die trying. So you have three choices if you're a billionaire. Give it to your kids and spoil them, probably ruin them. Give it to the government, which who knows what the government does with the money, or deploy it via good NGOs in your lifetime and have that satisfaction. Bill and Melinda have great satisfaction watching kids get immunized. I think every billionaire should do something similar. And if any of them want to talk to me, I'm John at roomtoread.org, I'm Wood at roomtoread.org, and I'm john.wood at roomtoread.org. I'm not hard to find.
Are you finding that other billionaires are coming forward?
There are some wealthy business people that are getting interested in philanthropy. There's not enough. There are some great examples. I mean, Jeff Skoll, the Skoll Foundation, one of my heroes. Jeff made a fortune as the first, founding president of eBay. And he's done everything from the Skoll Foundation, funding social entrepreneurs, Participant Productions, his film company, his new Urgent Threats initiative. Jeff Skoll is a hero. I just wish that several dozen other billionaires would say, I'm going to be like Jeff Skoll or be like Bill and Melinda Gates.
You've spoken in the past about democratising philanthropy. Presumably that means it's something that everyone can get involved in.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think it's an either or thing, right? I think everyone should do something. I'll give you an example of this. My sister teaches at a school that has 69% of its kids eligible for free school lunch because they come from poor families. And she told them, even if you only have a little, you can do a lot collectively. They did a penny drive. They raised 100,000 pennies, collected 100,000 pennies. That was $1,000 US. They gave Room to Read the money. We printed 1,000 local language children's books. The biggest funder to Room to Read Bangladesh is Hong Kong International School. The students there did a readathon. They raised 75,000 US dollars to give it in there. We literally have our country director from Bangladesh flying through Hong Kong next week to go meet those students at HKIS. So there's just, everyone can do something. It can be students in a wealthy school. It can be students in a poor school. It should certainly be people like you and I, because we have resources, so why not share that with those who are less fortunate?
Scholarships are a good way of doing that.
Scholarships, I think, are brilliant. It's about 250 US dollars per girl per year to change a life forever through the power of education. And it's so inexpensive to do, I really question, why do we live in a world that has 200 million little girls who don't go to school every day? It can be a 15-year-old AIDS orphan in Zambia. It can be a girl in post-Khmer Rouge Cambodia. It can be a girl in the mountains of the Himalayas or in the deserts of Rajasthan. $250 per girl per year. So let's do the numbers. If you had 1 million people each pledge to do one scholarship a year, you'd have 1 million girls in scholarship. Wouldn't the world look incredible if you had 1 million girls? Because then you'd have 3 million children and 9 million grandchildren who kind of follow that girl as she ages. But as she ages, she is educating her children and grandchildren. My mother read to me. My grandmother read to me. My life without educated women would have been a very, very different life. So in my mind, these girl scholarships are my karmic duty to go out and say every little girl should go to school. So should every little boy. You can't forget one gender or the other. You can't play them off against each other, but every boy, every girl should go to school every day.
It may be a little early to talk about legacies, but how would you like people to think of Room to Read?
I mean, if you ask me for my deathbed speech, what I want to be able to say when I'm gone from this earth is very simple. I'm hoping that there are tens of millions of productive adults who are just like you and I, who have had an education, and they say, my life changed the day Room to Read came to my village and opened a school, opened a library, delivered some books, funded scholarships, tens of millions of productive adults. And that will lead to many, many, many hundreds of millions of children and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren who follow off that one educated person. Your family had it, my family had it. It might have been 2 or 3 generations ago. In my case, it was my father who got a college scholarship. The only one of 7 kids to go to university in his family. And that vaulted us to the middle class. I then had a public library, a school library, and a good public university. I went to the University of Colorado. Changed my life forever.
And we wish you well. John Wood, founder of Room to Read, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.